If the British Empire and its Commonwealth last for 1,000 years, men will still say this was their finest hour.
We stand for Queen,
country, and video games. BRB UK.
Worse teeth,
better accents.
Hello, and indeed ahoy hoy. Your ears are not deceiving you. I am not Dan. I am also not Coleman. But fear not, I am not on my own this week. Welcome to episode 296, before I forget to say that, of the... I nearly said Sarcastic Gamer.
You are really rusty at this, aren't you?
UK podcast. You can tell I don't intro very often. But right, for anyone who doesn't know, two of our usual hosts on here, but I am not on my own. Coming up on the show later on, we do a bit of what we've done played with myself and Coleman, which is not just to throw too many time-jumping spoilers in there, but it will be pre-recorded a couple of days ago, because due to his job as an international man of mystery working on a Mission Impossible, cannot come to the show right now. But yeah, we managed to pre-record a bit of what we've done played already this week, and Dan is, I assume, all destinied up to his eyeballs and can't possibly come to the show either. But not only do we have Coleman and I chatting later, I've managed to rope in a sexy Irishman in the form of Mr. Diarmuid.
Hello there. How are you?
I am good, sir. How is you?
I am very, very good. It is E3 week. It's like Christmas Eve at the moment.
Yeah.
A week-long Christmas Eve.
Which is why I'm glad that you're here, because tackling all that stuff on my own, one, could go on forever, and two, is sad to do on my own. It would be sad. So I'm very glad you're here, sir.
I'm delighted to be here to talk about all of the cool stuffs.
Yeah, we've got some cool news as well. And I'm going to repeat a joke that I said on last night's Rec Room as well, when they said there was no sexual content allowed in the game. I did ask if that meant that your accent was banned from Rec Room.
It was. I'm now lifetime banned. I don't know if you heard that.
We won't totally take over the show with VR. Just because Diarmuid and I are launching a VR podcast with Kev, which we've decided to delay till after E3, because there'll be lots of nice juicy E3 news as well. But just because we're doing that doesn't mean that everything in the show is going to be all VR. It's okay.
It just means the very first thing will be VR.
Just the first few things, a couple of bits here and there will be VR related, but not everything. It's okay. Diarmuid and I do play other games as well. But we have to go with one thing that isn't wholly VR related, but has got a bit of PSVR in it, which pleases myself and Diarmuid. I don't know how excited you got for this, Diarmuid, but boy was I excited when the first day of Sony's countdown to E3 Day 1 announced Tetris Effect for PS4.
Yeah, blood rushed around my body to particular locations. This is kind of cool. So obviously, in the few days we've had before E3, everybody seems to be leaking and announcing stuff early for either reasons they chose to do or reasons they didn't. Thankfully, PlayStation seems to have come out and said, okay, there's obviously a lot of stuff we want to get through, but we're not going to get through it all in the conference.
This is organised leaking, basically.
Exactly. Organised leaking. Like proper leakage, steady leakage, everyday leakage. Yesterday, we got the news that Tetris Effect is coming to PlayStation 4. So it was the very first thing that was announced, and it's coming in autumn, and it's being developed by the Enhanced Games guys. Those were the guys behind Res Infinite and Luminous.
Lumines, Luminezes.
And also has the Res auteur, Tetsuya Mizuguchi.
Yes.
So he's kind of deeply involved in this. The trailer is really cool. I don't know who does the voice, but the voice was awesome. That was really, really cool. But they kind of go through this actual real-life academic study thing that happened when they studied the effects of Tetris on a group of people in... I can't remember what college it was, but basically how they started seeing Tetris blocks kind of in dreams and in real life, and it's really weird. But it basically gave off this kind of impression that the game is going to be really psychedelic, very similar to what Res was. So I'm looking forward to it.
Apparently, even though the trailer looked quite abstract, apparently everything in that trailer was made with in-game assets.
I would believe it.
So Yeah, as I said, it looked like an abstract version of Tetris, but it seems to be kind of gelling the background and kind of environmental stuff, and then musical stuff with it as well. Possibly, it didn't kind of hint at that too much, but it hinted at that bit, but it didn't kind of give too many details on that. But then that's all kind of blending together, and it's got your classic Tetrominoes, but generally it seems like Tetris, but done in a very different way, basically.
Yeah, I mean, like people have been remaking Tetris for years now, ever since it first came out, and it's just kind of cool to see someone behind it that seems to know that they need to do something a little different in order to make it interesting. And I trust, based on the pedigree of these guys, I trust them to be able to make a really good Tetris game, really interesting stuff.
But that's the other thing that makes me think this is going to have some sort of like musical tie-up and basis, because basically Res Infinite and Lumines, basically those both had a musical tie-in to them, and both, even though Res was more of a kind of shooting game, they're both kind of got puzzle elements to them as well, basically. So
yeah, I would expect music to play a really big part in this, whether it ties directly into gameplay or whether it's just kind of used as a way of kind of amplifying and increasing tension and all that kind of stuff. Whatever they do with it, I know they're going to do a good job, because these guys know what to do in that sense. In terms of the modes, you mentioned already the marathon, the sprint modes. There's also the zone mechanic, which they mentioned in the press release, which was allowing you to stop time while you can move around the Tetronimos and stuff like that, and kind of if you're getting into trouble, or if you see a kind of a way of getting more line clears and all that kind of stuff, you can kind of it's little things like that. I want to see it obviously being played
how it
to
all
see
comes
what
together.
Exactly.
But
yeah,
it talks about being able to clear 12 lines at once using that zone method as well. It's just like, what?
That will also make blood rush to certain parts of your body very quickly.
But yeah, I mean, like I did kind of tease on Twitter that basically my only concern about this game is that my PSVR headset is being used to read my mind and kind of like determine what type of games I would like on PSVR. Because they said they were very like laboured in saying that the whole optional PSVR, but this is going to be one that I think is going to be definitely enhanced by being in PSVR, and I can't see me playing it outside of it as much as I'll play it in it, basically.
Agreed. I'm looking forward to this, because I think it's going to be the next, obviously Res Infinite, but also the next kind of thumper. I want one of those experiences that kind of really put you in the experience, and the trailer certainly seemed to imply that would be the case. So I'm looking forward to it. Definitely looking forward to it.
Cool. Yep, definitely looking forward to that. Also, another thing that was announced only a couple of hours ago now, basically, but as part of Sony's countdown, which we sort of mentioned before, the Tetris Effect was mentioned on Sony's countdown to E3 Day 1. Day 2, they had a slightly less exciting announcement. I mean, I think they've set up what they're having on all 5 days, and two of the other ones that sound like more exciting to me, at least, because they're PSVR stuff. See, we're getting a lot of VR mentions in Diarmuid. Anyway, but this other one was something that we already knew about, but kind of a fresh look on it, a few more details, and a release date for Days Gone.
Yeah, so they, as you say, they've given us a tease of what each day is going to be. There's going to be a VR mode added to an anticipated game one of the days. I don't know which one it is.
Spider-Man, please, Spider-Man, please, Spider-Man, please.
But another one was, they said that today's one was going to be the announcement of a first-party studio, the release date for it. So Days Gone had the trailer, which looked very nice, introduced a number of new elements that we hadn't seen before, like mountain lions. Not freakered mountain lion, I noticed. It was just a regular mountain lion, but still dangerous.
Yes, but
still wants to eat you.
Yeah, the other animals in the trailer did look like they were possibly freaker related, because they talked about, the three things they seem to introduce that we hadn't seen before, because I think we'd seen wolves in a previous trailer, I think. If I remember
we'd seen wolves,
correctly.
We had seen a bear as well.
Yeah, but there's mountain lions, ravens, and bears. Oh my! Just to get the, Wizard of Oz reference in there. But yeah, they referred to the ravens as criers as well, that they were criers in their world, basically. And I don't I don't know what that is a reference to necessarily. But yeah, they also mentioned, kind of in some of the details they mentioned in the stream, that your bike is your partner and it's kind of an essential part of your equipment. It's like fully upgradable, but you also need to take care of it and finding gas, petrol to us UK peoples, or making repairs to it as it goes. And it seemed to kind of hint in gameplay-wise that you possibly, like, you might get to a new area and then it kind of conks out and then you need to go find a vital part to get it going again. I was kind of getting that kind of hint and vibe from what they're doing. So it sounds like it might just be a way of, you're out in the open world and you get to a certain point and then it'll conk out and you'll need to repair it, basically.
Yeah, it seems like a way that they can force exploration, and certain story beats. So if something happens to the bike, you might be stuck in an area for a while where you have to either stay and survive, or you might have to find parts for your bike and so on. There's multiple ways they could do it. They also mentioned a few other parts of the world building stuff, like the Rest in Peace faction, which looked interesting. It's interesting to see how in this dystopian universe, like many others, they kind of split off into groups, and certain groups have different ideologies and so on, so you immediately come into conflict with them. It's implied that the Rest in Peace faction either kind of worship the Freakers, or they think they're the next evolution, or
this is the thing, they detailed this on the PlayStation blog, and it kind of it does come into play in terms of the kind of gameplay elements as well, because basically they worship the Freakers to the point where they will kill anyone that isn't a Freaker, but they won't kill a Freaker. So we've seen in the other demos where you can drive crowds of the Freakers towards something, and it kind of hinted at the fact you drove a crowd of Freakers towards a Rest in Peace camp, like the Freakers would take them all out because they won't defend themselves against them. So yeah, that as I said, interesting gameplay. I have to say that I'm a little bit cold on this game just because I'm a bit bored of the whole open world thing and a bit bored of zombies generally. But this trailer did a bit more to get me back on board, although the release date being a bit far away was a bit surprising.
I kind of expected it. I kind of knew, if you think about it, it's kind of been a pattern of Sony for the last few years now. Like they really tend not to put their big games in kind of the regular places you'd expect them. Like they tend not to release stuff around that September to November timeframe. They usually rely on the third parties to deliver the big games during that time. And then they kind of stagger out their releases over months. So similar to this year, you seem to have one big game that you can get into every single month. So it kind of made sense that they would move it to early next year. I'm expecting, obviously with a big name like Spider-Man, they're going to aim for September. That's probably the one exception here. But most of their primary stuff that they control, that like isn't just in league with Marvel in this case, they do tend to try and find its own little window that gives them enough time to breathe, and like it seems to have worked really well for them so far.
Well, I mean, they did well with Horizon Zero Dawn in a similar time period, so I guess it makes sense. But did we mention, February 22nd, 2019 is the date, basically?
I was going to double check that at the end just to make sure.
I'm not sure we glossed over that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. As I said, I'm more interested than I was, but they still got to do a little bit to get me on board with this one, I think, basically.
Based on the gameplay previews that I read, which came out a few weeks back, it seemed that a lot of people were kind of like, it's good, but it needs a lot of polish. The fact that they've announced this particular release date actually gives me hope that probably someone at Sony is kind of saying, we need the polish. You have the time now to do that. And I trust that Bend, because they're a decent studio, I trust that they can actually put some real spit and polish behind it and deliver something that's decent.
I recognise the name. I can't associate it with what they've done previously. What?
The more recent thing that they've done was the PS Vita Uncharted game. But they were also the crowd that was originally behind the Siphon Filter games.
Ah, right. Okay, that makes more sense. I'd rather they went back to Siphon Filter, to be honest, but still.
You never know. It could happen.
Yeah. All good. That's the kind of main bits of news. Like, there is a few other things we'll be covering in a minute, and a few announcements and things, but that was the kind of main stuff that wasn't either confirmed leaks or just like straight up announcements of games, basically. Although that pretty much was the case with the PS4 one. But yeah, anyway. Quite exciting, good to see, and makes me more keen for the next 3 days of announcements from Sony as well. I think they're announcing things at 4 p.m. UK time for the next 3 days until their press conference, so look out for those as well. Right, in a couple of confirmations of things that we reported on last week, things we were right about. Apparently, it's been confirmed that Crackdown has been delayed.
Well, confirmed so much as there are now multiple sources. So I saw this earlier today, and I think it was Jason Schreier from Kotaku who had sources himself, multiple confirmed to him. Later in the day, I saw that Eurogamer kind of confirmed through their own sources, separate to him. So
sources close to the project, they said, basically.
Exactly, yeah. So nothing's been said by Microsoft. I doubt they're going to say anything, because they haven't really dated it, I don't believe. They hadn't dated it previously. It was just assumed it was 2018. But
I think, they originally unveiled it in 2014. It was then slated for a 2016 release, which kind of makes sense. But then it was delayed from that. Then it was due out in November 2017. Then it was pushed back to spring 2018. Then summer 2018. And now it's apparently delayed till 2019. So I believe we're up to 5 delays with that game by now.
If it was announced in 2014, I don't know how early it was in development at that stage. Clearly it was quite a bit. But obviously the whole cloud thing buggered them in terms of their development. But you would have expected them to be able to, once that became a reality, and that was around the same year.
Yeah.
Once that became a reality that it wasn't going to happen, you would have expected them to hopefully be able to retool what they had and get something out. But
you would have thought so.
It's both a bad thing that it's been delayed, obviously, but it's also kind of a good thing that Microsoft don't seem to have just cancelled it. They seem to have said, okay, you need more time, there's more time.
Right, but I can't remember who said this, otherwise I'd give them a shout. But and Coleman won't thank me for saying it, but if this has been delayed again and is in the point it was, and bearing in mind that people apparently saw the single player, but no one, and all the destruction had been taken out of that had been teased in the game, and said that was being reserved for the multiplayer now, which no one has seen at all, like outside of the studio type thing. If that was the case with this one, how bad was Scalebound to have got cancelled? Like, what kind of state that was in? Like,
very true.
They could have had literally nothing and just been built from the ground up. Or do you think they just couldn't have 2 massive games that had been delayed? I don't know, but I mean...
Potentially, but I think the difference between Scalebound and Crackdown is, I believe don't they own the studio that's doing Crackdown?
Possibly.
Or no, they don't. I think they've actually hired in Sumo Digital to do it.
Well, that's the thing. It keeps on changing studios. It's been through like 3 different studios. But I think it's been through 2 different studios, but someone else was handling the multiplayer for them as well, basically.
But then you have Scalebound, which is basically a project that Microsoft was paying for, but it was being like wholly developed by Platinum. And we've seen Platinum on their A game be brilliant, but on their B and C game not be great. Now, it's possible Microsoft might have seen it being turned into a B and C game rather than an A game, in which case they might have said, you know what, we don't have enough money for this, let's just leave it. But in this case, I think Crackdown, to be honest with you, I don't know how popular Crackdown is. It's not a game I've ever really gotten into.
I loved the first one. I bounced off the second one a bit, but
I've kind of heard similar that the second one wasn't quite as good as the first. But it has that kind of following, and I think if there was ever a time that Microsoft needed to kind of prove to the people that have been with them the entire time that they have their backs, now is the time. And I think sticking with Crackdown is a good move. Hopefully this extra time allows them to really nail it, and it could come out being an absolutely brilliant game. We don't know.
I think their biggest problem is the fact that games of this ilk and in this genre have done what they've done and taken it to a bigger, better degree in the same time that they haven't come out with the third one. Like, I'm thinking, and not necessarily, like, there's things that are very similar, like Infamous and stuff like that I would say has got a slightly better traversal system that gets around a bit easier. Even Assassin's Creed, to some extent, like, could be comparable in some areas, but also stuff like Batman as well. That's, I think they may have had the whole Batman trilogy in the time since the last one as well, basically. There may have been some crossover there, but yeah, it's just I worry that this game will either just completely become vaporware or will never be able to live up to the expectations it's built up for itself because so much is resting on its shoulders.
True. I mean, Sony was in the same position with The Last Guardian, and they could have easily pulled the plug. I'm sure they probably had that discussion multiple times, but they kind of stuck with it. They released the game, and I certainly enjoyed it quite a lot. But obviously, a lot of people, like you were kind of saying, it seems a bit behind the times. That was certainly a criticism leveled at The Last Guardian as well. But at the same time, they delivered, and they delivered the majority of it was for fans.
Yeah, and quite a few people liked that, and they also did a nice fan service thing in delivering the kind of VR thing for free as well. See, I snuck more VR in there, damn it. See what I did? But right, yeah, anyway, we better move on because we're kind of pushed for time a little bit. But also, the other thing that got confirmed, originally leaked by a keyring last week, but Assassin's Creed Odyssey has been confirmed by Ubisoft. They put out a little teaser trailer which not only confirmed the name, but also seemed to confirm the Spartan setting as well, basically. And I've deliberately said Spartan. A lot of people seem to be kind of saying that it's set in Greece and saying that it's a Spartan thing set in Greece. And look, it could be set in Greece and have a Spartan main character. That could certainly be the case. But I just wanted to kind of point out that being Spartan and being Greek isn't necessarily one and the same thing, because Sparta was a slightly independent state from Greece until it was conquered by the Romans, basically. So you're talking slightly different things there, basically. So, as I said, it could be in a Greek setting and could have a Spartan character. That could entirely be the case. But from what I've seen, they have shown a Spartan helmet. That was that keyring. And also the fact that you're kicking someone off a cliff in 300 style would seem to indicate to me that there's definitely more Spartan than it is Greek from what they've shown so far, basically. But as I said, that could be something where you see both locations in that game anyway, basically. My interest is peaked. I'm a big fan of 300. The kind of, well, not so much the comic, although I think I would have liked that. I just really got into the film when that came out. But hey, anyway, there you go. Yeah, so there you go. Visually stunning. Anyway, but then, let's get through a few quick points of interest. A few things have been announced. One of them is my favourite VR game. More VR.
We keep doing this. We keep doing this.
It's almost like we like VR and there's no one here to stop us. Anyone that didn't hear, Moss is now available on HTC Vive and Oculus Rift. It's also available on Steam today for £23.79. It's worth every penny. I absolutely love Moss. It's really good. I was curious to see, because it said it was out on Steam, I was like, really? Are they doing a non-VR version? But they have actually specified on the Steam store that you need a VR headset to go with this, and that makes more sense to me because this, as I said before when I talked about this game, I don't see how this game works outside of VR, basically. So, but yeah, if you have an HTC Vive and Oculus Rift, I strongly suggest picking it up because it is fantastic. Also, in news that I will leave Dan to actually dive into next week when he actually returns from possibly already playing this game or something else, whatever he's doing this week. But Destiny 2 Forsaken has been slightly detailed. Launches on the 4th of September, includes a new PvE and PvP mode named Gambit, and a big chunk of story, apparently, as well. Although, that'll be a first for Destiny. Anyway, but apparently as well as the Reef's new location, and I think the Reef was the kind of one of the communal area type things for people messing about in and dancing and stuff. Yeah, it includes a new location, the Tangled Shore, and you also visit the Dreaming City, apparently.
Yeah, so the Dreaming City is similar to the Dreadnought from the Taken King expansion. So it's a large area that you get to explore and do missions in, but it's also where the new raid is going to be set. And the video itself looked quite impressive for that area, so I'm looking forward to seeing that. The Gambit mode that they were talking about as well it's a kind of a PvP and a PvE mode. So it's like a horde. It's very similar to Prison of Elders, which is another thing from the first game, but you're kind of facing hordes of enemies The enemies drop, I believe, motes of light. You collect them and you bank them. And when you bank enough, the other team, which are playing at the same time in their own horde mode, get what's known as a blocker, so basically like a boss character, and they can't bank more motes of light until they defeat the blocker. And it's all about trying to get as much motes of light, or more than the other team. So it's like
Whilst
a PvE
still trying to
mode
grief
where you're
another team.
Exactly, yeah. So it's an interesting mode, and they also detail some of the quality of life improvements as well that are coming to it. But yeah, as you say, Dan will kind of go into more detail on those. But it does look like an impressive amount. I think the biggest thing is going to be whether the price is worth it. For me, probably not initially, but like for the Taken King, I didn't get that until the Christmas after it was released, and it was on sale, and I got it like incredibly cheaply, and it was worth it at that price. But we'll see.
Also, two other things that have been detailed prior to E3, kind of game announcements. I don't know why everyone isn't waiting for E3. Like, E3 is when you do a game, probably not to get lost in the thing, but these were actually announced. These aren't just leaks or confirmations. A new game called Generation Zero was announced by the Just Cause developers Avalanche Studios. It's coming in.
This looks cool.
Yes, it's quite cool. It's coming in 2019 for PC, PS4, and Xbox One. They said it was an open world sandbox action game for up to 3 people. Although it is weird because I swear in the video it had a team
4
of
people.
4.
Yeah, so I don't know what the hell that's about, but
yeah, I don't know why there's the difference there. Maybe it's something they've decided at the last minute that they'd rather go with 3. I don't know. But yeah, they said strong, persistent elements, which I'm guessing that's like you can actually kind of build stuff in your base or something, possibly. But they said it was set in an alternate version of 1980s East Coast Sweden, where machines have taken over, basically.
It looked kind of like a mix of Left 4 Dead and State of Decay, but instead of zombies in either of those, it's kind of low-tech robots.
Well, I described it as Rust versus Mech-Assault with a Swedish Stranger Things vibe.
I think people now know what we're getting at from what we've described. So that's good. That's good.
Anyway, it seemed interesting. It was kind of, team-based thing, battling big mechs. And they said it was having to overcome insurmountable odds by setting ambushes and taking on tough enemies with incredible gameplay skills, whatever that means. But yeah, anyway, sounds intriguing. The next one that we got announced as well was a game called, Fear the Wolves, which is a Stalker Battle Royale game by Vostok.
Yeah, so it's a Battle Royale game, but it looks an awful lot like the old Stalker games. So the ones that were set like near Chernobyl, and it looked really interesting.
Also reminded me of Metro, but then Metro probably reminded me of Stalker. But still. But right, stop me if you've heard this one, Diarmuid, right?
Yes.
100 hazmat suits parachute onto an island.
This game will do really well.
Yeah, it's not exactly the case, but they did say there was 100 players. You do parachute into an area, not necessarily an island. You're hunting for supplies. You get to shoot other players. You have to run away from wolves, run away from packs of wolves. Apparently, one wolf won't be that threatening, but a pack of them will be, type thing. And then you have to kind of get to a helicopter extract point to get the hell out of there, basically. So it sounds like they won't be doing the closing circle thing, but it sounds like you'll be funneled into going somewhere because of, getting to the helicopter point, basically.
Yeah, it's a nice new take on the formula that's been reused quite a bit recently.
Yeah. And they did say that, like, you're not just hunting for, like, weapons and stuff, but you're also hunting for, like, survival equipment that will also like get you into other areas to get even better loot. So there'll be like poisonous areas, and they did talk about hazmat suits, but the one thing they showed in the trailer was you putting on like a gas mask type thing, and then you hear the kind of Geiger counter noise like going nuts when you're in an area and kind of searching for stuff in there, basically. So yeah, as you said, puts a new spin on it. It's one of those things where I wonder if some of the other Battle Royale games will just steal the mechanics they're planning and be beat them to the punch, possibly.
At the rate Fortnite is changing stuff, probably.
Probably, yeah. But yeah, who knows if they'll get sued out of oblivion by PUBG, but hopefully that'll be unsuccessful. But they did say Steam Early Access this summer, but also consoles 2019 as well. So yeah, that sounds cool. Also, in the rumour section, this is pretty much the only rumour, because every other rumour's been confirmed already, or stuff has actually come out. But yeah, it's basically rumoured that Fortnite is heading to the Switch. It's one that we didn't cover before. There were a couple of things. I think there was a leaked image published on 4chan, which kind of hinted at this fact, like before last week's show, but that was the only source at the moment. There does seem to be more sources that are saying the same. The Korean's game rating board, that old chestnut, have apparently, and I say apparently because I don't know if you've seen that link. There's a link to a tweet, but it's all in Korean apart from the word Fortnite on Switch. So I'm guessing that's what they're saying. I don't know. That's
the word before it is no Fortnite.
Yeah. But it seems to be indicating that Fortnite is coming for Switch.
It's pretty much confirmed at this stage because today people released kind of images showing that there was a Fortnite update uploaded to the eShop. There was also a Paladins update. So that sheet that was on 4chan, it's basically confirming it. It's like all but confirmed at this stage. It's a no-brainer as well. I mean, it's on practically everything. It runs on mobile phones now, which means it should be able to run on Switch.
Yeah, so it seems to make sense. This seems like a fairly big no-brainer. I'll be interested to see if it retains its whole free-to-play aspect. I assume it will, but...
I would assume so, but and that's interesting because Paladins is also a free-to-play game, so is that going to maintain it as well? I assume so, because it's interesting because this is going to be like the first free-to-play on Switch that I can think of.
I didn't think there was anything before.
So it'll be, it's going to be interesting. I do think it makes sense, and I'm wondering if they're going to have crossplay. I'm assuming they will, because they have that between mobile and consoles and PCs and all that kind of stuff as well anyway.
I wonder if Nintendo will play nicely with that or not. But also, apparently, Eurogamer did say that they'd also been able to confirm this a bit more because they'd heard this before the leaks had actually gone out as well. So seems to be credible and seems to make sense. So yeah, and as you say, gives further credence that the actual initial leak on 4chan might be credible with the other things that it said as well, basically. So yeah, that's all good. Right, that's all our news for this week. As I said, Coleman and I have got a bit of what we done played coming up, and then after that we will get the hell out of here and get all ready for E3 next week. So yeah, that's going to be quite exciting. There should be lots of podcasts and stuff like that, but we'll detail that in a minute. For now, myself and Coleman will be talking about what we done played.
Hello, Coleman here, and Tim here.
You're not supposed to be here.
No, but I thought what we could do, because I had to miss last week.
Time travelling,
that is what I did. Anyway, Tim, we're going to talk about the games, what we done played. But first of all, where have you been, Tim? You've had a busy weekend.
Yeah, I had a busy weekend. I was at UK Games Expo.
The UK Games Expo.
Yeah, you commented on the hashtag reading that way if you don't capitalise it properly.
Games Expo.
Games Expo. But yeah, for anyone that doesn't know, that's not video games. That's my other love, board games, basically. So yeah, it's the UK's biggest board game expo. It's growing year on year. I think they had another 10,000 people there this year, so they're up to like 39,000 people. And yeah, it kind of grown, I think about 30% since last year, basically. But the stuff on display is like huge, like swathes of massive like stands and everything else, and yeah, all good board and card game goodness and lots of like miniature games and stuff as well. We were obviously there a little bit for BigRedBarel stuff and kind of getting the odd review copy here and there so we can talk about some stuff on the site. But then also, obviously, that was a lot of that was interest in Tabletop Tuesday things. One of the things I thought I'd mention, I have done a little write-up, a little preview of this on the site. We do Expo Diaries that we do for the day, and it's kind of just a write-up of all the games that we've seen on the day. One that I thought was particularly relevant, I'll just mention quickly, was the Jetpack Joyride board game, made by a company called Lucky Duck Games, who have got a couple of other games that are video game related as well. They've just done a Fruit Ninja game as well, basically.
Okay.
Jetpack Joyride is coming out soon. So it was available to play kind of a bit early at the show, so I actually made an appointment to make sure I kind of got to see that one as well. But I don't know about you, Coleman, I wasn't the biggest fan of Endless Runners, but Jetpack Joyride was one of the ones that actually got its hooked into me and was probably my favourite Endless Runner back in the day as well.
At a time when I weirdly got into Endless Runners, I actually didn't like Jetpack Joyride at all.
Ooh, hiss you.
Yeah, I think Jungle Run was probably the one I put the most time into. Yeah.
I bounced off that a bit, but yeah, as I said, like, literally Jetpack Joyride. I think they gave it away. Was it? I think it was free on mobiles or something, but then it was like a low price on PlayStation or something.
It was free to play, and then I think you could buy power-ups and buy extra lives and things to carry on your run.
But anyway, quite an interesting kind of... What's the word I'm looking for? Reconstruction?
Games
Not
Expo.
The right word? No, but a kind of representation. That's what I was going for.
I see.
A representation of the video game. Obviously, you know, it's not the same because it's kind of different because it works out in like a physical form, but then also it's a 4-player game as well, basically, or up to 4 players. Although there is a single-player variant as well, basically.
Okay.
But in the kind of the 4-player game, you're basically you got I think 3 rounds, and then you've got like 4 kind of cards that sit in front of you. Now, I say cards is a bit dismissive. I'm not sure if in the actual final game whether there'll be more like boards, but in the game the version that I played, at least, they were kind of on cards. But they're 4 kind of sectors that you have to kind of navigate a path through. It's kind of divided into grids, and some of those grids have got like obstacles in them, like missiles and laser fields and all that type of stuff that you need to dodge around.
Right.
And then some of them have got coins in them which you need to try and pick up. And the movement is done by kind of like everyone...
Tapping on the screen.
No, that's the thing. No screen with these type of games,
What?
Coleman. I know you're not familiar with this type of thing.
I don't like this.
But basically, and the other thing that kind of plays into the video game, the video game room generally is you've got like sort of tetromino type pieces, and they're not quite tetrominoes because they're slightly different shapes, but that gives you a good idea of some of them like L-shaped and some of them kind of in kind of different configurations. But they're basically just see-through things that you lay on top of the grid that you're going through, and you're trying to use them to plot the path. Now, what you're doing is there's a communal pile of them between however many players you're playing with, and you're all kind of grabbing from that communal pile and trying to make your way through as quickly as possible. So if you don't grab the pieces that you need quickly and someone else has already got them, then you can't use that piece. Basically, you have to kind of lay them end to end to each other and to progress through. There's also kind of like other things that they've lifted from the game. Like there was the little scientist that you could high five if you went through them, but you couldn't jump over them because that would set them on fire. But then there's different missions per round as well. So you'll have like things where it says like you've got to touch the roof for like 10 cubes, 10 grid squares from the start to the finish, or you have to jump off the floor 5 times or something like that. It would be like different for every time, and they're like randomly selected between rounds, so it never quite plays the same. But yeah, there'll be like 3 missions per thing, and you get a certain amount of like bonus points or stars if you like successfully achieve one of those missions while going through. Also, as soon as the first person has actually finished and escaped out of the other end, that's it. Everyone else stops basically. But there's a nice kind of catch-up mechanic in the fact that you can also pick up like bits of equipment, and they kind of allow you to kind of break some of the rules. Like the one that I picked up allowed me to travel through rockets and stuff like that, basically. So whoever's furthest behind in the scoring gets to choose what type of gadget they want to pick up first, basically. And as I said, like it did a good representation of that game while being enough of its own thing to kind of make a fun, like, board or card game type thing. And I quite enjoyed it. I think it's definitely one to keep an eye on, especially if you were a fan of Jetpack Joyride. But even if you weren't, it's kind of different enough to kind of, as I said, one to keep an eye on. Little write-up on the site, and more details coming soon. Not sure if it's coming to Kickstarter. That's one thing I forgot to check, but it's definitely on the way soon and will be orderable soon, basically.
Okay. If you want to hear more about the UK Games Expo, then there's going to be more. Well, there are more write-ups on the on BigRedBarel.com. There's the diary days. I'm sure we'll have previews up as well. Tim managed to bring home a stack of games ready for Tabletop Tuesday that is the size of 2 Warwick Davises. That's right, 2 count them, two Warwick Davises
Nearly my
on
own
the shoulders of giants. Sort
Nearly
of.
my own height in board games. It's,
Yeah.
it's one of my aims. But yeah, loads of really awesome games coming up for Tabletop Tuesday in future. Anyone doesn't know, you can win a game just by playing it, just by joining us in the loading bar in Dalston. So come along and play, have some fun, win a game.
More of that at the end of the show when I'm not here. So anyway, so I have been playing. I want to touch on something that you were talking about last week, Tim.
Oh, touch on
Detroit.
Touch it. Oh,
Detroit Become Human.
You can touch me all you like if you're talking about Detroit.
I've just finished it just before we started recording as well. So I was having a chat with our good friend Bleezy before the show as well, and he beat it. So that's encouraged me to get to my point. I was quite happy that I got because there's multiple endings in this game. I got an ending I was very happy with.
Okay, cool.
Didn't have any kind of downside to it whatsoever. So I was really, really happy about that. The game itself, just to touch on a couple of points, because you were kind of up against it last week against Dan and
2-on-1.
Yeah, Dan, who notoriously hates David Cage, and Kev, that notoriously hates any kind of story...
Any story.
Pick your own story game, sort of
Anything
thing.
that's not based on the mechanics in a game, he hates with a passion.
Telltale, Until Dawn... any Quantic Dream game, they're not going to be anything for Kev.
So some of my favourites, in other words. Anyway.
Yeah, and I'm a massive fan of the Quantic Dream games. Not apologetic for that. I've spoken about it before. It's until recently, I was a big fan of David Cage. You know, there's alleged stories that we won't go into right now. We've spoken about it on the show before.
Yeah.
Never mind what your opinion is on David Cage. Never mind what your opinion is on Quantic Dream. Never mind what your opinion is on the previous games in the, not series, but in from that studio. I think there is enough different in this game to give it a try if you have not enjoyed one or more of the previous games. And I think that if you've not played one of these games, then it's definitely worth a try. I'm getting quite an interesting one because a lot of the people I work with play games, but they're not gamers, you know?
Yeah.
They play, and I hate using that, casual gamers. Probably the least offensive way of saying it. But they are the kind of guys that, do you play games? Would you play it? What console you got? And I go, I got PlayStation 4, and I got my Switch. Oh, I just got a PlayStation. What are you playing? Oh, I'm playing Destiny 2, I'm playing this, I'm playing this. Oh, what are you playing? FIFA?
Yep.
That's it.
But see, I put those in a slightly different category. For me, there's like the 1 to 2 gamers, and like they're the FIFA people, or kind of, or just play Call of Duty, or there'll just be like 1 or 2 games a year that they pick up, and that I actually associate as something slightly different to a casual gamer, that just someone that just goes, I got a free weekend this weekend. Oh, I'll go and buy a game, and I'll just see what.
How
I
about the
kind of pick
term
up,
social gamer?
Yeah, something along those lines, I think. Yeah.
Okay. But anyway, so I'm finding a lot of people at work, Detroit's caught their eye just because of the graphics, just how mind-blowingly beautiful this game is. That is enough to hook someone in and probably turn them off the game as well, because it's not going to be what they're thinking this game is.
It's very cinematic, though.
It is very cinematic, and you might find that quite a lot of this game is, I'm watching a movie while pressing buttons, and that's not for me. Fair enough. I found that there was enough to do to not make me feel that this was a cinematic game, that I'm just pressing buttons in at opportune moments. But at the same time, I quite like QTEs in games, and it's something that I enjoyed as a kid, and kind of like that they still exist in a very limited amount.
As well.
Yeah, not kind of shoved down our throat as they were at one point. And talking about how beautiful the game is as well, I'm finding there was a particular moment in this game where I got pulled in for a second and forgot I was looking at a video game.
Nice.
One of the character, it was a young girl, and it kind of camera focused on her face, and I forgot that I was looking at a pre-rendered character.
Cool. That's always good.
And then it cut away, and unfortunately, it then cut away to a sign, and it got a slight graphical pop in, and I went, "Oh yeah,
video game."
Clicked me right back into reality. I've really enjoyed playing it through. With Heavy Rain and Beyond Two Souls in particular, I never went back and played those games fully all the way through.
Yeah.
I went back and did certain things over and over again. This one, I've got to the end, and it's actually made me go, do you know what? I really think I could platinum this game, and I'm quite tempted to do so, because even though I've got through the journey, I thought until I got to the last chapter of the game, I thought I was going to get through, have my journey, and that's my story. Yeah. I'm absolutely fine with that. but I am actually curious to see how certain things play out in the game in other ways now.
Yeah, and I was speaking about this last week. I think that the flowcharts that they show you really reinforce that. They show you at the end of each chapter, and it shows you the path that you didn't take. And I think that's something that really reinforces the idea that they're pulling you back in to go back in and see the path you could have trod. But yeah, I think it was really interesting. And just to confirm, you said it was about 8 to 10 hours, I think?
Yeah, I think I spent about 8-10
hours
hours on it. It's hard to tell because I did take a couple of breaks in between to do things around the house and stuff, so I'm not sure. But I think it was around about 8. I'm sure I could check on a site somewhere and see what my playtime on that was.
And just another quick question, like where might be an easier question to ask in retrospect in the future, but where would you rank this in your kind of like of David Cage games, basically?
Oh, of David Cage games, taking out nostalgia.
Yeah.
Because nostalgia is an ugly thing.
Yeah, and that's why I said it might be easier in the future.
I remember this thing, therefore I love it.
Yes.
Yeah, trying to take out the nostalgia element of the previous game. Because I have played, Omicron No Man's Soul, I have played Fahrenheit or Indigo Prophecy, whichever region you're from. I have played Heavy Rain, I have played Beyond Two Souls, and now I have, So I've gone through all the games, and I would actually put this at the top of my games now.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think this one is taking the top of my games. And it has got problems. It has got some glaring problems. You might take a look at this and go, it's a story about civil rights. Why not make a civil rights game? You could say that a lot about sci-fi in general. A lot of sci-fi is taken from previous stories we've known. Right,
but I think I've got a good argument for that. And it's a line of argument that can obviously be argued against. But for me, this is an allegory for sort of slavery and the problems that comes up for that. Mm-hmm. If you discuss the actual thing that you're making an allegory of while doing that allegory, it doesn't strengthen your argument, it weakens the allegory. You know what I mean? Like you're not deliberately tackling that subject head on because you're doing it in a way that I think is more likely to subtly win over people that haven't been won over by the argument that you've made for the actual thing. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's, and I'm not saying, as I said, not saying it's not necessarily heavy-handed in some cases or doesn't handle it sensitively enough. I hadn't seen all of it to make that judgment, but I just don't think that you can, as I said, like, if you're making an allegory or something, or making kind of, like, not even a parody is obviously the wrong word, but even in the case of like making a parody of something, you don't have that actual thing in there with a parody as well, type thing. And it's the same sort of principle. Yeah. I for me, as I said, it would weaken the argument if you brought up that argument within the argument type thing. You know. Okay. Like, anyway,
I mean that's one way, definitely one way of looking at it. The way I'm looking at it is it's sci-fi. Sci-fi is usually derived from something, if it's a real life thing or if it's a story that predates, from mythos and all this. Even Star Wars comes from old samurai films and different Greek mythology and all this kind of stuff.
It's a space western, basically.
Space western, like all this. Everything's derivative of something. Yeah, and this one, you could say, well, why not make a civil rights game? So no one would bloody play it. It would be boring. I've made a video game about slavery and civil rights in the US. It's like, yeah, great, cool. Enjoy your 50 people that are probably going to play that, and schools that it will get shopped out to most probably. It will have its audience, but not as big as something like Detroit would get. The other thing, like there is some very heavy-handed writing, depending on what paths you take and what relationships form. Some of that is a bit crowbarred in. I didn't find a lot of it that terrible.
But don't you think, from what I've seen as well, that the flowcharts not only kind of reinforce going back and playing the game again?
I've ignored the flowcharts.
Okay, but they give you an appreciation for how difficult it is to make a branching story in terms of, like, well, if you made this decision here, that makes a difference here, and and it's kind of, a lot of people say, oh, well, Mass Effect, you made all these decisions and they never really played out. If they had have done, they never would have got back to a conclusive story at the end type thing that dealt with everything. It was an impossible task type thing. And I think, just as I said, like seeing how many different ways they have to script it and how they have to plan for your interaction and in the order in which you did things and everything else.
In the earlier levels, you can kind of go through and go, oh, I missed this 1 or 2, 3 things. And then as the chapters progress, you kind of come out of this spider's web almost of just obscene amounts of directions this story could go, or choices that you could have found that could have shaped things, not even in that particular section, but much further on in the game and not realised. All that stuff is really interesting. I thought you were going to go towards where you could see like where your friends have made decisions and where the internet has made decisions. Yeah. And I think I'll look back on those once more of my friends have completed the game.
Okay, yeah, I think it's.
But at the moment, I kind of just it went to a point where the percentages were going down and down because not that many people have finished the game. Yeah. So I went, well, I'll come back to this later because and I was finding it very distracting as well from what I was doing, making my own decisions. But yeah, I
did you save the fish, Coleman?
I did save the fish.
Okay, I wonder what difference I wonder if that makes like a big scale difference throughout the game.
It makes no difference whatsoever.
It'd be quite funny if it did, though. Anyway.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say about it is the voice acting is a bit weird in some places. Some of the acting is terrible. Some of the acting is brilliant. A lot of that is excused by the majority of this cast is androids. Mm-hmm. You'd expect androids to be very wooden, very monotone. But that said, a lot of the ones that, meant to be breaking through this android programming are still very monotone and wooden, whereas other ones that are still androids are the most human characters there. So
maybe that's a comment in itself.
Yeah, there is definitely a talent direction that's gone awry somewhere. Right, okay, but for the most part, I've really enjoyed my experience, and I'm going to play through it again.
Cool.
Shall we do some beaters? Because you've actually had a quick go on the old Mario Superstar Tennis Aces Monkey Doodle 64.
When you say a quick go, I had a very quick go because basically I did take my Switch with me over the weekend, but this was a beta that required online access because it was an online tournament basically, and I literally got to have. I came home and got home a bit earlier from work than I could have possibly done, so I had a little bit of time spare, but very little. And then obviously when I was travelling around for Birmingham and just busy at the weekend, I didn't really get much time to play much else than that. But I did have one quick practice go against a computer type thing, and then one go against a human opponent, which he kicked my ass as Yoshi. Just from that short go, it's definitely changed enough from the Wii U version, which I thought fell a little bit flat.
It did seem very basic in the terms of the controls were very limited, and it did seem a lot of now I've hit it. Yeah, Pong, more Pong than an actual tennis game,
and for me, it was more just the fact that it didn't feel as polished and as well put together as previous Mario tennis games, which was the problem type.
And when you've got a Mario anything game, there needs to be some character and colour and entertaining parts to it. And Mario suggests like a family-friendly pick-up and play. This just kind of seemed too easy on the Wii U version.
Yeah. And basically, and they definitely added some levels to that. I mean, in a World Cup, I would have liked another Mario Strikers, because that was pretty good on the Wii back in the day. But anyway, that aside, Wimbledon coming up, them getting a tennis game out, that's not that surprising at this time of year. But they've definitely added a few layers of complications, might be the wrong word, but kind of layers of tactical depth to it that kind of definitely set it aside from the previous version, which I'm glad to see. I'm a little bit worried, and this is obviously something I get a better taste for playing out over a period of time, but a bit worried that they might have overcomplicated it, over-egged the pudding a little bit in terms of trying to get it past what it was before. But if you don't like all the things that they've added, you can just play in a plain kind of vanilla mode that takes away those stuff. But the stuff that they've added, like you can there's power shots that you can kind of and I'm forgetting the actual name for it, but you can basically build up your bar that you kind of get energy with, and you can use that energy to move around the court quickly to get a return. But if you don't, you can build it up and use two different levels of super shots. One of them's just a thing that you jump up in the air and you kind of smash it, and you get to aim it at a piece of the court, and it kind of goes into slow-mo mode, and you can just aim it where you want. And it seems to be the quicker you aim it, though, the harder it goes towards your opponent, sort of thing. But you can also then, instead of aiming it away from your opponent, you can aim it at the opponent, and then they can time the return, and if they can time the return well, they can get what they call a block in and return that. But if they time it badly, and it degrades their racket, and you can only take 3 hits on your racket before your racket gets completely KO'd, and that's you out of the game, basically.
Right.
So there's an actual other win condition to the match as well. And I don't know if this is going to be the case generally online, but the matches that they had in the tournament were just first to 2 games, basically. So your opponent served and then you served, or vice versa. And you know, I think it was just first to 2, basically. So they're quite short, sharp matches. But then there was also another kind of level if you built up your like super meter thing even further, which kind of gives you a massive power shot that kind of is not quite unstoppable. Again, it can be blocked, but is even harder to actually time the blocking of, basically. But again, you can use your, I think they call it energy, but you can use that like meter that builds up to actually slow down time a bit so that you can return. Although I found that changed the timing of things significantly enough that it made it difficult to then judge the timing of the return anyway. So yeah, it'll be interesting to get used to that and kind of see how that plays out as you go. The other thing they've added that I don't think was in the previous version at all was trick shots. And that's something you can use to build up that meter more quickly, but you can also kind of use it to lull your opponent into a kind of false sense of security. So Mario's trick shot, which was the only character I really got time to play with, but Mario's trick shot allows him to do like a little cartwheel from one side of the court to the other and still manage to get there in time. And then you return it and it returns a kind of, where you aim it a bit better than it would if you were just kind of scampering across the court to get to it, basically. So yeah, as I said, adds a few levels of tactical detail, which kind of, I think, could benefit it well. They also seem to be indicating, and this is obviously something I didn't see in the demo, but it seems to be indicating that they're adding a few more things in terms of the single player content. I'd be really keen to see if they add some of the stuff that was in I think it was the 3DS version that was really good, when they had the kind of Mario Run mode type thing, where it was like Mario level 1-1 and you were hitting it against a wall and having to like time the hits to get him to jump over things and stuff like that. But yeah, I'd be interested to see what they do with that generally. But yeah, I am more keen and want to keep an eye on it to see what it's like, even though I did get my ass kicked online. But hey.
So, are you looking forward to the release from after playing the game?
Yeah, as I said, like I'm still a little wary, but I think I am keen to see how it comes out, and I'd be keen to like pick up a copy and actually like get to grips with how those mechanics all play together and see what the single player content's like as well, basically.
Okay. Cool. I've been playing a beta 2. I've been playing
beta 2.
The Crew 2.
The Crew 2.
The Crew 2.
The Crew 2.
Crew 2.
Now, was this all cars, or did you get to mess around with some of the other vehicles?
I got to mess around with all the vehicles, Tim.
Ooh.
You would be jealous of the vehicles that I got to mess around with.
Were you on a MM boat?
I was in a car, I was in a boat, I was in a plane, I was on a motorbike. It was awesome.
Okay.
I mean, kind of awesome.
Did you put the bike in the boat?
No, you can't do that.
Can you?
So I played a little bit on my own, and I played a little bit with Bleezumus last night. That was quite fun. You get a very early taste when you start the game. You do a little race in the car, and then it will suddenly kind of get you to go, hey, here's all the vehicles you can play with. So it'll get you to race in a car, and then suddenly turn into a boat, and then suddenly turn into a...
Are they Transformers?
They're not Transformers per se. They're just things that you switch on the fly. You can switch on the fly, and they have no kind of logical reason for you to do so.
Right.
It was kind of weird because I've spoken about my disdain for the crew's handling in the first game. It kind of felt like you were a boat on the road. And
so now you can be a boat on the sea.
You can be a boat on the sea. Yeah, it was kind of weird. So playing in the cars, and then I'm sucking at that, and then suddenly we're in boats, and we're like, okay, I'm doing all right at this, and then we're in planes, and then I really suck in a plane, and then
crash and burn.
I lose, and it's like, welcome to the Crew 2. So I carried on. I stuck predominantly to cars because I've kind of realised after the Crew has stuck all these vehicles in, when I'm playing an arcade racer, I want a car, a bike, maybe a truck. I basically want land vehicles.
Right.
I don't really want planes and boats.
You're happy on land.
I'll get a wave racer if I want a boat. I'll get a plane racer. I don't know what plane racers are out there if I want a plane.
Okay. The only plane racers I know are in VR, but anyway.
Yeah. So I'm mainly playing in cars in the beta. And then I joined Bleezy yesterday, and he showed me about switching on the fly in the open world map, which was quite funny, where I stayed in a car on the road, and then he turned into a plane and flew off, and then he started dive bombing me in the plane, and then suddenly turned into a boat and landed on the road. and had like nitrous boosters. So that was quite amusing. And then we decided to drive from New York City to Las Vegas.
As you do.
That was quite fun as well.
Road trip.
Yeah, nice little road trip. It took us a little while to do. I think it took about 20 minutes to do the ride.
Okay.
Interestingly, as soon as we started doing that, Bleezy's car went missing. So every now and then I'd see his name pop by, but he'd be invisible to me.
Right.
Which was a little bit annoying because we wanted to have some fun and knock each other off the roads and stuff, but you can't really do that when you're invisible.
No. But it is a beta, so, you know.
It is a beta. Hopefully that gets fixed. But like I say, I've realised that I arcade games, arcade races, I want them to be, you know, races in cars and bikes and stuff. By adding the more vehicles in, it seems like, you know, that's what I play GTA Online for. That's not what I play my racing game for. And those have plane races and bike races and stuff in there as well. And as well, I'm finding the handling. So we had two different opinions, me and Bleezy, on this. He came to the conclusion that he got used to the handling in the crew, whereas I refused to. And he's finding that the handling is way too easy.
Right. But
the rubber banding is awful.
Okay.
So he'll be like quite happily racing along and beating everyone, and then all of a sudden the cars will just outrun him for no reason. So he's finding it easier to just take cars off the road to continue racing normally.
Hey, that's my way to race anyway.
There you go. What I'm finding is it's still got that crew jank to it with the steering. I find the steering very stiff, very sluggish, and I'm starting to get used to it now. But there's points where, if I was playing, say, Need for Speed or Burnout, I know there's a turning I would make. But when I'm playing this, my car will just fly off the road and through a barrier and something.
So what you're saying is you're bad?
Yeah, it probably is. I'm just bad at driving games. And I just got used to Need for Speed over the years. Who knows? But yeah, the beta, I don't know if the beta's wrapped up now, but the game's releasing in like a week or two now.
Okay, I have a question, Mr. Coleman. Yeah. Well, I have two questions, in fact.
Okay.
You know how you said that, I'm presuming it works in a similar manner to the previous game in the driving, where the open world stuff is, like, they've got kind of major cities with a few landmarks in that make them noticeable, but then the distances between those cities is condensed.
And according to Bleezy, there was a couple of towns that were missing from the map.
Oh, what, from the previous game?
Yeah.
Okay, so they've maybe condensed it even further and taken out...
Apparently it's exactly the same size.
But,
you know, Bleezy has apparently studied this map back and forth, playing this game too much, and has noticed that there are some small towns and things.
But that could be things that they're adding to the final game.
It could just be the beta.
Possibly.
We don't know. It could just be he thought something existed and didn't. We don't know.
But then, getting on to my question, how does that then work with boats and planes? Are you just literally flying in the areas where, you know, flying above the same area and then just taking a boat in the kind of lakes and seas that are naturally there?
You can do that. You can do that if you want, or you could be in a boat and you can go around the sort of circumference of the country, or you could fly over. It's kind of that thing of, okay, so you're racing in Las Vegas and now you've done all the races here, so go to California, and you know you're racing in California.
Sort of foreign countries that you can then
it's all the US.
All US.
All US.
Okay.
Same map as last time, but whereas the last one was set more autumn, winter time, this one's set more summertime.
And obviously this is kind of in the arcade wheelhouse, and we were talking about how much we liked... Wheelhouse. But we were talking about how much we like OnRush at the moment, and that seems to...
Which by the time this releases, that game will be out.
Yeah, exactly, and that seems to be just beating that to the punch, and also sort of dialed up the arcade to the maximum and kind of, you know, even more arcadey than this is. Do you think the Crew 2 is going to suffer in its wake, basically?
I think OnRush is just going to outright outsell it.
Yeah.
To be honest. I don't think... I think there was enough negative press for the Crew to have knocked that sequel, and
to sour this. Basically.
And you know, fair play to them. They put a lot of work into the sequel to try and curry favour with the people that went for the first one. But I don't know. Apparently, there are the hardcore fans that still play the Crew, but I don't think it's going to be enough of a player base to keep it going. And I don't know. It depends how much the nice summer weathers and neon colours and planes and boats and things are going to attract people. But I honestly, OnRush is a super fun arcadey game. The Crew 2 is an arcadey game that has an open world element to it.
Yeah.
It depends what you want. Do you want...
But the original Crew had like a bit of a story, but I remember it being very generic. Oh, you need to go here and race.
Oh no, it was there was a story and it was terrible.
Yeah.
It
But
was,
I can't see that would pull anyone into this over and above OnRush, which doesn't, have much of a story beyond the, hey, we're going to go race kind of thing.
Yeah, and the Crew 2 does have a story as well, and it's less of the the mob is after your brother and your Troy Baker bearded hipster man and all that kind of stuff.
So it's basically gone in 60 seconds.
No, that was the first one. This one has more. Hey, you're an up and coming racer trying to be a racer.
Good.
Here's some dudes that will help you be a racer. So it's the old Need for Speed story you want before they start adding in mobs and hijackings and trying to be fast and furious and stuff.
Yeah.
I honestly think OnRush is going to outsell it because it's just outplaying the 2 and outplaying the 2's pieces. I just think it's the fun, the more fun game. More fun game.
Yeah, good.
It's the game that is more fun. More bang for your buck.
What else have you been playing this week, Mr. Coleman?
How would you like to hear about a hack and slash that has elements of Darksiders with Groundhog Day and a bunch of cell shading?
Would I?
Yes, you would.
Good.
So this is Omensight. This is a game from Spearhead Games. They previously made Stories, The Path of Destinies, which wasn't very good.
Never heard of it.
Exactly. That's probably why you've never heard of it. This has been out on PlayStation for about 2 weeks now, I believe. And is out on the Steam as well. As I mentioned, it's a cel-shaded hack and slash, and that immediately grabbed my attention. You play as a character called the Harbinger. The Harbinger is summoned...
Of Doom?
Just the Harbinger.
Oh.
They are summoned to the world when there is an apocalypse afoot, and they are there to prevent the apocalypse.
That's pretty doomy.
That is pretty doomy. It's very Darksiders-y. You see where the Darksiders element comes in.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a kind of a land of anthropomorphic animals, big rats and big bears and what have you, with human characteristics, and you're brought into this world because it's all going to end, and you've got to find out why and prevent it. The way you do that is reliving the same day over and over again through different points of view with the same character.
Hence the Groundhog Day. See, I thought you were going to have, Bill Murray and...
Bill Murray isn't there, sadly.
No.
He totally would have done it if you asked him, I reckon. Spearhead Games, you dropped the ball. So... Now, when I say you're living the same day over and over again, I don't mean like that's a central mechanic to the game, like it's a thing of your rewinding time. It's not a Life is Strange, or I've completely forgotten what that big indie game was last year as well. The one in the hotel where people keep getting murdered. We scored it really well on the website, and I've forgotten the name of it.
I've forgotten the name of it too.
Anywho, so it's not like one of those games. It is literally you're following a story, and every now and then it'll go, do you want to do this, or do you want to do this? It's not you're actively rewinding time to do the same thing over and over again. And the reason for that is there's certain heroes that could prevent the end of the world, but they are killed in action in this regular timeline. So you'll need to go back, and they'll be like, this character's like a big bear warrior type character. This one's like a cunning wolf type character. They've both been slain in action. You'll need them to help you. Which one do you want to help first? So you'll go back and see the bear, and like the bear's on a suicide mission. So you'll go back and help him with his suicide mission to make sure he doesn't die and that he's alive at the end.
I have a question.
Yep.
There's a bear suicide mission in the woods.
Sure.
I didn't say it was a sensible question, Mr. Coleman.
But whenever you get to the end of one of these stories, then the world ends, and then you start again, and you'll then follow a different character. And I think the idea is the Harbinger's simultaneously going through, once you've done one storyline, that's it, the Harbinger's gone through that timeline, and then the Harbinger's...
Okay, so it's not roguelike in any way then?
No, not at all. Okay. It is literally a straight story-driven hack and slash game.
Okay.
It's really fun. It's very fluid. I'm trying to think of what the hack and slash you would attribute this to. Kind of like Devil May Cry feel without the guns.
Okay.
I think that's probably the best way for me to put it. Or old school God of War. Probably a good way of putting it as well.
Did you ever play? It's a game I really liked, but I really struggled to remember the name of it at the time I was talking about it, let alone years later. But it had a really odd name, not sort of cell shaded, but kind of like a almost painted graphical style. Was kind of about the end of the world. Previous generation.
Did you play as a wolf?
No.
Oh.
El Shaddai.
El Shaddai?
Yeah. Did you ever play that?
No. Isn't that the Lost City of Gold?
No.
No?
Ascension of the Metatron. It was a kind of weird...
You're making words. Are you having a stroke?
No, it was a weird kind of game and a weird kind of presentation, but one I really, really liked. It was more of a third-person action game, I guess.
Okay.
But
what was
yeah,
the platform?
Pretty sure, yeah, it was PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. I'm pretty sure I played it on the 360.
Oh, right, I've never heard of it.
It was one of those games that not a lot of people necessarily heard about, but like it was really highly rated in kind of reviews and stuff, basically. I remember at the time Keza McDonald particularly loved it as well, basically.
Okay.
And I think I got a review copy of it and tried to shout about it from the rooftops, and I wasn't alone in doing so, and it still didn't necessarily... but it's...
That's why we don't have El Shaddai 2.
But it touched on a few kind of things, because it almost sounded like it was a Bible story type of thing from the description of that sort of thing, and he was like a guardian angel, basically.
Okay.
And he existed outside the flow of time.
Oh, I see. So it's quite similar.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It seems like there was quite a few touch points, and I really, really liked that game.
So back to Detroit. Every story is derivative of another story.
Yes, exactly.
And the same goes for
we've
video
come
games.
full circle and back to the story we started on Coleman.
But if you're interested in checking out Omensight, it is available right now. As I said, it is super cheap. It's like $18.99 at the moment. I think there was a PS Plus discount when it first launched, which is gone now. But yeah, totally check that one out.
Any idea sort of kind of what size the game is in general? Like how long or...
How long? You probably get through it in about 6 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but reasonably priced for,
But you can always crank up the difficulty and see how you fare.
Okay.
Yeah. That's all the games I got.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
All right. So
nice to speak to you, Mr. Coleman.
Thank you. I'm going to go away now.
Time travelling over.
I'm going to go do OnRush and prep for the E3 show, because that's going to kill me, I'm pretty sure. It hasn't... Just to get a flow into where we are in the time stream, the E3 show hasn't happened yet.
Yep.
But we're planning it, and the next time you'll hear me, I'll be recording that, and then I will die.
What you need to do, Coleman, is edit one of the shows.
Right.
And then travel back in time and edit one of the different shows.
What I need to do is train the Harbinger how to edit podcasts.
Yes, exactly.
Then they can disrupt the flow of time. And then, before you know it, El Shaddai 3.
Good.
All right.
Also, another game that came out this week that Diarmuid and I have been playing is the wonderful OnRush. And this is one of those things where I'm, so far at least, very pleased that it kind of delivered on the promise that me and Coleman made when we came back and raved about this at the preview event we did, and also just having played the beta and gone through a bit of that. But yeah, for me, it seems to be delivering. It's nice to get the extra vehicles that we didn't get to play previously, and also nice to see the extra courses. How have you been taking to it, Mr. Diarmuid?
Really enjoying it. I've been looking forward to this game for ages, purely because I've had a hankering for Motorstorm ever since Apocalypse came out, and nothing followed it up. It plays beautifully. The driving just feels good. I like that the different vehicles actually feel like they have the weight that you would expect. Like the big truck feels like you're really flinging it around the track, whereas the bikes are really nippy and kind of you can get in between cars and go up like really narrow ramps. It's perfect. It feels very good.
The level design's very good for playing into that as well. The fact that it's much more difficult to get a truck up some of the jumps, and it's much easier to kind of, especially if like a big truck's following you on the bike, you can actually nip out the way into these little areas that it's much more difficult for the bigger vehicles to follow you as well.
Yeah, and because of the fact that coming first or last doesn't matter in this game, because of that fact, it means that if you kind of cheat a bit and have like the bike paths be kind of almost shortcuts, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really take them anywhere that is an advantage, really. So it is quite good. And I like the fact that the bigger vehicles, a lot of their powers that you get in the game that you can kind of either trigger using the rush mode or that are kind of passive and are always there, always benefit having all of your team around you. So like the biggest truck, I think, has this sort of a shield mechanic that it grants shields to. Yeah, it's really, really good. I like the fact that it kind of gives shields to everyone around you, so it actually benefits the bikes even being closer to you. And it's a kind of a risk-reward thing. You could be closer, but you're probably going to get hit by bigger vehicles, but you'll also have a shield. And I just like the way they've done it so far.
It plays into the whole kind of like team player aspect of making sure that you have not just like one type of vehicle as well. Like, as I say, I really like the trucks, but if you were a whole team of trucks, you'd actually be possibly weakening yourself as a team, basically, especially in certain modes. But for anyone that hasn't seen, it's definitely a different take on the arcade racer. We kind of detailed it a little bit before, but just playing the different modes and stuff as well. There's the kind of the plain kind of, and I was very snide to Coleman previously about saying, oh well, the name of that mode is in the game, and it's really not the name of the game. It's not rush mode. It's something else basically. But yeah, there's the kind of the general base mode where you're kind of just building up rush meter, and the more rush meter does, that plays into like the team's rush meter, and you're just kind of playing off against each other. There's countdown where you've got to get through checkpoints. There's, I think it's lockdown, where it's basically like a moving King of the Hill.
Yeah.
And I think that works quite well, and I've been really enjoying and playing that. And then what's the fourth mode?
Isn't it the Switch one?
Yes, Switch. And that's where you play all the different, like, you start on a motorbike and you like progress up as you get crashed out through the different.
It's very similar to, if you've played Counter-Strike. It's very similar to gun game. So in Counter-Strike, you start off with like a knife.
Like pistols or, yeah,
exactly.
Okay, knife
and then
pistols.
You get a kill and you get a gun, and then you kind of upgrade. This is kind of a reverse gun game in that you kind of want to stay in the bike, because when you kind of, if you take people out, or you're not basically wasting up the team's life bar if you stay as the bike or you stay as the kind of earlier vehicles. But then you kind of run out of switches at the end, so you have to stay as the big truck, which obviously takes the most amount of life. So you kind of don't want to be crashing in that either. So yeah.
If you crash in the biggest vehicle, you're not out the game, but once the whole of your team has crashed out of all of their vehicles, then your team is eliminated, basically. So, yeah, again, that plays really well. A lot of them play in, like, multiple rounds and stuff like that, but as you say, it's very different to kind of most sort of racing games, even different to most arcade racing games. It's not about being first, it's not about getting over the line, it's about kind of staying with your team, working as a team. And in so much, it feels much more akin to a kind of class-based shooter game, and you've got those different classes of vehicles, and it's how they interact and work as a team that will come to fruition and make it better for you, basically. But yeah, like the extra courses we didn't get to play. The one that I was really keen to play because they showed it off at Rezzed was the golf course level, and that's a really fun level, I think, as well. Yeah, I've really been enjoying it. I'm a bit worried in the long term about like just whether that enjoyment will persist. I think they need to add a couple of modes in as we go, and I hope that's something that they've got plans for.
This game will live or die by its support. I think.
Yeah, I think so.
As long as they keep kind of adding new bits and pieces to it, it's still a fantastic game. Its base gameplay is good enough. It just needs kind of continual, very similar to a game that we've mentioned a few times when we were describing this in the past, Overwatch. Overwatch has been adding new content kind of continuously over the last 2.5 years or whatever it's been released, 2 years I should say. So it's one of those cases where they need to do that. They need to kind of release content regularly, not just kind of skins and emotes and all that kind of stuff. They need like proper game modes to be released, new maps, all of that kind of stuff. If they keep that up at a pace, I think it'll survive and do quite well.
but also with how much they've analysed and clearly looked at those type of games in that environment, and they even mentioned a lot of the shooting games, and like not just Overwatch, the stuff like the fodder is very much taken from fodder's like the weaker vehicles that are not on your team or the opposition's team, but can help build up your boost bar and stuff by taking them out. That feels very much like a mechanic stolen from kind of Titanfall, or influenced by Titanfall. And as I said, with how much they've obviously looked at that sort of market, they've hopefully realised that that is something that will sustain those type of games, and I'm hoping that's something, and I think that's why we only got 4 modes at launch, but I don't know, because it would be difficult to possibly do something like massively different. The only other problem I'd say is, like, I think this game is at its best when you have a team or at least a few people that you're friendly with that you're playing alongside with. Me and Coleman have had a great laugh just playing through the single player content together. And without going online. But I think you will get the best of it when you're playing in the team, and I worry about being a bit dry if you were the type of player that just wanted to play on your own kind of thing,
Yeah, agreed.
I think that might get older sooner than it would if you're playing with a team. That said, me and Diarmuid are going to stop talking now so that we can go and actually play more of it. So, yeah, and I'm really keen to get more stuck into it and kind of unlock more things as we go. But like you say, it'd be nice to see maybe a couple more vehicles added, maybe like another vehicle class possibly, and a few more game modes would be good as well, basically. But other than that, I'm thoroughly enjoying it at the moment. It's really scratching those kind of itches of arcade racers. I do slightly fear because we haven't had an arcade racing game for a while, and Crew 2 might not be quite arcadey racing, but it's definitely kind of more towards that kind of side from the kind of what's the word I'm looking for, simulation type racing game. So I worried that they might get caught in the wake of of this game, basically. Grip as well, that's slightly different. It's got weapons and ceiling driving and all sorts of nonsense, and that's a little further out, so maybe that'll be alright. But this could be bad news for the Crew 2 possibly. But yeah, absolutely loving OnRush. Even if you're not the biggest fan of a straight up racing game, don't let that necessarily put you off. Try and have a go at it and see if you like it, because I think it could really be of interest to people that like don't necessarily like your standard type of racing game as well, basically.
Yeah, and if you do decide to pick it up, hit us up on the Discord chat that we have, and we'll send out like PSN and Xbox Live names and stuff like that. We'll try and get groups together and stuff like that.
Because a whole team of 6 of us would be good fun with this, actually. Haven't tried that yet, but yeah, that'd be good. Without further ado, we need to get out of here because we've been running long now. That it's been me and Diarmuid and me and Coleman. There's a running theme here that may hint at the fact of why we've run a bit long.
Don't say anything to Dan.
Yeah, it's fine. Don't let Dan know, and then he'll be fine. But yeah, E3 is this week, and we'll have lots of coverage from that. A few podcasts that we're planning, and generally follow us on Twitter if you want to kind of see our chat as we go throughout the shows as well, basically, or throughout the press conferences and stuff, basically. But then we'll also be doing a bit of podcasting on the back of that as well, and you'll hear that on this feed and possibly on the Barrelcast feed. I'm not sure what we're doing with that, but I think most of it will be on this feed. So keep an eye out for that, and we'll have some coverage next week as well. Mr. Coleman's going to be working overtime, so we have to get to that. Also, just before we go, Tabletop Tuesday. We had an absolutely ramming week last week from our friends at Big Potato. Came along with a game called Clask, which is kind of weird, well, it's not weird, but kind of a take on air hockey, but on a much smaller table with magnets. I can't think of a better way of describing it than that, but go check out a video of Clask. It was really good fun. We had a little tournament for it as well, gave out a couple of the tables, gave out some extra potato-y prizes, and it was really good fun evening. Thanks to everyone who came along. It was a nice crowded one again, so always good. And this week's game is a real doozy as well. It's a game called Decrypto. It's basically been described to me as a better version of Codenames, which really excites me because Codenames is a great little word-based party game, and this one's got some kind of weird red screen thing going on. I don't fully understand how this works yet, but it looks fun, and I've heard it's very good, very highly rated on Board Game Geek again, and should be a good one to come along for. So if you want more details of that, go to the top left-hand corner of the site, or come along and search Meetup for Tabletop Tuesdays, or just come along to the Loading Bar in Dalston on Tuesday, where we'll be there each and every Tuesday with a new game that you can win just by playing it. So come along and join us, and you could win too. If you do want to comment anything to us, you can do so on the forums, you can do so on our Discord feeds, and you can also just chat to us on Twitter. We've got at BigRedBarel that you can fire your questions and other bits and bobs at. You can follow me on at BRB Tim, and Mr. Diarmuid at Diarmuid_S.
Correcto.
So yeah, come and fire any questions over to that. Come and follow us for E3, and we will see you on the other side of some E3 press conferences. Job done.
Bazinga.
You and your ears are quite welcome.
For the podcasting goodness that you just heard.
Why not roll on over
To BigRedBarel.com.
for more podcasts?
News, reviews, and videos from the biggest, reddest site on the internet. BigRedBarel.com.
We have to point out this is a leak, and this was leaked by a keyring, so it's not the most reliable information.
I don't know about you, Kev, but I get all of my important news off keyrings.
Yeah.